Jennifer Boitine. I'm your general manager here. Thank you very much for coming to take a step toward learning about the hiring process. We have been collaborating with Human Resources on this idea because, you know, as I'm sure you've experienced, many of you have gone through a process before where you want to promote, and maybe you've turned in an application or you've gone through the interview process and you didn't get selected, and yet you were left afterwards wondering, well, what the heck happened? And what could I have done better, or what was some of the feedback there? And in the past, there hasn't been as much transparency around the hiring process. And so we've been working as your union with HR to talk about that and to talk about some of those challenges. And Human Resources has also been really focused on this and adding transparency to the process as well. And so we thought, let's collaborate together and come up with a couple of seminars that can help expand on transparency through the hiring process, answer some of the questions all of us have, so that everybody's playing on an equal playing field when we're trying to get promotions here. And so it is my pleasure to introduce the new HR director for the county, Brenda Dieterichs, who's been here, what, about a year now? About a year. And please welcome Brenda and the HR team to go through this process. They will be available for questions when we're done. So thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And I am so excited to be here. This is such a big initiative. I'm Brenda Dieterichs, Chief Human Resources Officer, as you heard. And this is a very important day for us. We're kicking off something that is unique and new between the union and the county. We've entered into a partnership. And the partnership is to take you all to a place that you always could go, but to make it a little easier. We all know that we have great employment opportunities at the county. I've been in public service my entire career. I love public service. I think it's my calling. I must do it. So I'm assuming that most of you feel the same way. So how do we do the best for ourselves in that space? Well, one of the ways is you get into the county and you get a job, right? But then you wake up one day and you've been here 5 years. And then you wake up again and you've been here 10 years. And you're getting, little celebrations for that. And you go, okay, well, since I'm now going to stay, since it looks like I'm in, how do I get the best career out of this? And how do we get the best from you as a member of the Orange County family? That's what this is about. And again, I want to thank OCEA and Jennifer in particular for her leadership to partner with us to bring this to you today. And again, it will happen next week. So I don't want to use up your time on my comments, so I'd like to introduce our Master of Ceremony, Alicia Jacobs. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. As Brenda said, I am personally excited about being here because I have such a great team who's going to present to you today, and more so just to welcome you. This is really about you and your time and understanding the application process, which is a part of our recruitment. And with that being said, I want you to know that we have first Todd Daniels, who is from Learning and Organizational Development, who's actually going to do the presenting, as well as Dina Gonzalez, who is also Learning and Organizational Development. And from our recruitment area, we have Catherine Singh. I am going to ask one thing. That's going to be that let us get through the presentation, because we understand that you are only here for a short amount of time. Therefore, we want to make sure that we cover everything that you need to know so that you can be successful in completing an application. At the end of the presentation, we're going to ask for your questions, but if you need a piece of paper, because we have indexes of paper over here, if you raise your hand, I will bring a piece of paper to you so that you do not forget your question. And then if necessary, if we don't finish fielding each question, we will then take all of those questions, compile them, and then do an answer to them and have them sent to either Jennifer or Heather so that they can at least be answered that way, so that you're not being left out. And with that, I am going to now turn it over to Todd. Thank you.
My name's Todd Daniel. I've been with the county for about 15 years, and real quick, I was at planning about 15 years ago when I started, and they went bankrupt. I lost my job, but OCEA fought for me, kept my job, and that's why I'm still here at the county, so really appreciated OCEA. The recruitment process, right? No secrets, right? It's like playing poker. We're going to show you our hand, right? You're going to see all the cards. It's simple, right? We start with step 1, job announcement. We put an announcement online that a job is opened. Step 2, applications are received. Step 3, they're screened for minimum qualifications. Do you meet the minimum qualifications for the position? Step 4, we go through some competitive assessments, whether that's an application appraisal panel, a qualification appraisal panel like an oral interview, or online assessments. We look to qualify the candidates through competitive assessments. Step 5 is a referral or selection interview, and step 6, of course, is the job offer. We're going to go through the steps that are impacted by your application itself so you can complete your application, score high enough, be evaluated high enough to meet minimum qualifications and desirable qualifications so you can get to the interview process, okay? If your application's not on point, not sharp, and not detailed for the position you're applying for, you won't get an interview, as some of you may know. So the job announcement, right? It's a job description. It talks about minimum qualifications, desirable qualifications, and last but not least, any required licensure or certification, education that you may need for that particular position. How many people have been to the new site? We revamped the HRS, right? Job opportunities. Woo! Looks better, right? Much more effective, right? In order to sort and filter. Yeah, I want to introduce Dina
Hi, everyone.
Gonzalez.
I'm Dina Gonzali, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And like you, I'm a member of OCEA, and we hope that you get the most out of this. Just another raise of hands. Can I see who's actually been on it since we've revamped it and whatnot? That is fantastic. Good for you. Good for us. We really are working toward making it more intuitive so that it's easier to navigate for us in getting up to that next step. Todd, can you switch me to the next screen? Thanks. You have a handout, each of you, and if you'd like to refer to it, what we're looking at here is the average job posting. And there are 3 tabs in particular that you really want to take into consideration when you're navigating through looking for a job description that suits your skill set. Those 3 tabs begin with career description. This is going to give you an overarching view of what exactly is entailed in that job that you would be fulfilling. The benefits, that's for you to know exactly what is offered to you by the county as a benefit in being in that position. And the supplemental questions. If you're familiar with these 3 tabs, let me see you by a raise of hands if you're familiar and have what? Okay. Most of you may or may not know that these job descriptions either will or will not have the supplemental questions. We want to let you know that in those supplemental questions, though sometimes they can be time consuming because you're going through and perhaps what you feel reiterating your skill set is absolutely crucial in allowing whomever is looking at your application to know by your supplemental answers to those questions, your particular skill set and what you bring to the table. Hold on one second. Todd, can you flip me? Thanks. One back. Which brings us to best practices in completing an application. This, if you will, this is your 8x10 glossy. This is your introduction. This is the first view that anyone will have of you and what you represent, what you bring, your wealth of knowledge, your special skills. We want to absolutely make sure that you are cognizant of the fact that this is the part where you are to be thorough and concise. Really emphasize, based on the job description, something similar to what you're looking at, read through there and make a mental note of where your skill set best applies to some of those desired qualifications. And clearly demonstrate your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities based on what it is that job description is asking. So really be mindful of that and really go into great detail. One of the ways that might help you in doing this is to remember that this particular person that's reviewing your information may not have ever seen or will never see your resume up till this point. This is your opportunity to really elaborate and go into those details for yourself in that process. The supplemental questions count toward minimal qualification screening. It is of the utmost importance. Elaborate on that. Tell them what we mean, Alicia.
By that, I think it's real important for you all to understand that typically when you do it from a resume, you're saying implemented 4 statewide public relations campaign for radio and print media that resulted in a 40% increase in program participation. Now listen, in an application, you're going to say implemented 4 statewide public relations campaigns for radio and print media to promote the agency's Healthy Living program, designed all print advertising material using Adobe Photoshop, composed the scripts for the radio advertisements, selected and worked with diverse media outlets to produce the pieces, designed metrics to evaluate the effectiveness of the campaign, which resulted in a 40% increase in program participation. You notice that this was much, much longer and much, much more intense than the first sentence that I read. Okay, that actually, so that you'll know, is on your page 4 of your guide. We will make reference to the guide. You don't have the PowerPoint presentation because we didn't feel that the PowerPoint presentation would be as much value as the guide, so that when you leave here, you actually have all of the tools that you need in order to make sure that you can fill out a successful application. Todd?
I'll use the moving mic now. So how many people have actually applied here for a job at the county? Everyone, because you're all here? Okay, good. Just checking, just making sure I got a pulse. People say, Todd, I applied, I didn't pass minimum qualifications. Todd, I met minimum qualifications and I did not pass the app rating. I didn't get an interview. You know, it's crazy. What happened? Like I said, you're playing poker and the person's showing you their hand. Pull out the staff specialist recruitment. I know this may not be the recruitment you're looking to promote to next, but this is going to be our sample for today because everything is based on this similar and same design. See at the bottom of page 1, it says the ideal candidate. That's the desirable qualifications. The ideal candidate is going to possess these. Does everyone see minimum qualifications? I think it's bolded, right? These are the minimum qualifications. If you do not meet the minimum qualifications of the job, right, you either meet or you do not meet them. Okay? This is what they screen to. There is no surprises, okay? We're showing you what we screen to for minimum qualifications and desirable qualifications. Are we good with minimum qualifications? We know where to find them, right? They're going to be here. In groups, right? Get into groups of 3, groups of 4. What we're going to do is we're going to actually have you guys play the rater. So you didn't think you were going to be part of HRS, you're going to be part of HRS today for a few minutes. We're going to give you a few minutes, but first I'd like to introduce Catherine Singh. We're going to show you on the first one as an example on page I think it's page 3, page 2. It says minimum qualifications in your packets. We're going to show you how to rate the first one, and then we're going to ask you in groups to rate the second. So here's Catherine.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Singh. I'm one of the Assistant Recruitment Managers for Human Resource Services. Happy to be here today to share any information that I can that may be helpful when you're looking to complete your application and apply for a promotional opportunity here at the county. Or if you're sharing that information with someone else, that's great also.
So, this form was made at Todd Daniels' desk. It is not an actual example of what you will be scored by, but it gives you a sense of what someone in HRS will use to screen for minimum qualifications. So the first one says, 3 years of experience demonstrating knowledge and abilities of position or combination of experience and education. So there's this 3 years of experience cap. Do you guys also have a handout that says Edward Smith? Right? So you're in HRS, you sit down at your desk, you're going to review Edward Smith's application, right? And all you have is not an application but his resume. And you're trying to figure out, does he have 3 years of experience to meet the minimum qualification? So take a moment right now, look at his application, and what do you know? What do you see there? He has a degree, right? Do you guys notice that at the bottom of the page? Does it specify how many semester units he has? It says he's been on the dean's list a lot. Yay for Edward! But it doesn't specify that he meets the minimum qualifications solely on education. It's a gray area, right? He has a degree, so he probably qualifies, but it doesn't specifically state that on his resume. What about his work experience? Huh? 4 years at each location, roughly? Does that qualify? Yeah. He qualifies both probably on education, right? Kind of gray, kind of a wobbler, but definitely for experience, he qualifies, right? Now, in groups of 2, 3, 4, you guys get to rate the second one. Uses basic principles of mathematics, including percentages, means, medians, and other elementary statistical measures. I want you to determine in your groups, does Edward meet or does he not meet that requirement based on his application? Take some time right now. Talk within your groups, right? 3, 4 people, does he meet, does he not meet? Okay, I hear a lot of chatter. Your job's on the line now, ready? Does Edward meet or does he not meet that second minimum qualification? What are your thoughts? How many people think he meets that qualification? Okay, how many people think he does not meet that qualification? Right? Okay, for someone who said he met that qualification, where does it say in his resume that he has those particular skills? The second bullet, right? And it says utilize basic and advanced principles of mathematics to determine best operational basis for plane design. A plane is a thing with wings on it, and it, oh, that's a bird. Okay, so his question is this, is it's not plane, it's plant design, right? Because he's redeveloping and reassigning people within a plant, not a plane. Maybe it's a typo on the resume. True, right? But it does state here that he has and utilizes basic and advanced mathematical principles. Does it or does it not? It does. Therefore, he would have met the minimum qualifications for that particular MQ. Okay? What they're looking for when they go through and review this in HRS is they're looking for keywords. So, for instance, when it says utilize basic and advanced math principles, what are they looking for on the application? Utilize basic and advanced math techniques in my current job, and give examples, right? They're looking for keywords. Use the keywords, but put the sentence in your own language. Now, competitive assessments, like the operating or the qualifications appraisal panel, QAP, that's a panel interview. If you guys have ever interviewed at the county, you have 2 or 3 people in front of you. They ask you a series of questions based on a certain time, okay? That's also part of this competitive assessment. Performance skills online assessments have now been introduced here at the county, right? We're looking for the best candidates here at the county. You guys are the best candidates for your position, so as you promote, we're also looking to screen to get the best candidates through competitive assessments. The competitive assessment in this area that impacts your application is the AAP, the Application Appraisal Panel, right? Before we do this assignment, you'll have the Application Appraisal Panel for staff specialist. Notice, as opposed to a meets, does not meet, this is a rating on a Likert scale from 1 to 5. So the first one says, desirable qualification, right? So now we're looking for desirables, not just minimum qualifications. It says strong communication and presentation skills. This is on page 3. And the criteria is, if on Edward Smith's application he had no listing or qualification, right, for communication or presentation skills, he'd get a 1 out of 5. And if he lists strong communication and presentation skills and examples of those, he'd get a 5. So he'd get the most points. So looking at his application, so go back to Edward Smith's application. We're looking for keywords now, right? And those keywords, communication and presentation. Look at when he worked for Davidson Corning Corporation at the very bottom of that paragraph. What's that last sentence say? Right? Doesn't he state that he uses communication? Right? So how would you score him? He doesn't have a lot of examples there. He has one example, right, in all phases. He could be a little bit more detail focused, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But he at least gets a 3, where he lists both communication and presentation skills. I want to give the microphone to Catherine because I've been talking too much, and she does this for a living, so I want to get her take. What do you think, Catherine?
Thank you, Todd. In this situation, so as Todd explains, what we're looking for, and this is a little bit of a different scenario because what you have in front of you is a resume. And as all you're familiar with, what we're looking at when you submit your application is the information on your application and the supplemental questions. And if you look at the supplemental questions for this job posting, what you'll typically find is the key areas that are going to be assessed on an application rating. There are questions on the supplemental questions, and that's where you need to pay attention. And some of the key things that people miss are, if you're looking for this, I'm going to pick the number 3, ability to analyze data, draw conclusions, and make recommendations. So you're going to see a supplemental question, and I think if you look on the job posting for the staff specialist, you'll see there is a question there. So if I can juggle. I should have practiced the juggling, sorry. So question 4 on the supplemental question for this staff specialist, please describe your experience in evaluating and analyzing data and information in drawing conclusions and making recommendations. And so when you're submitting your application and that competency is being evaluated, that's where the rater is going to look for that information. So you can put that information in your job duties and your job description and in your work experience, but you need to make it really clear on your supplemental application. And what I see people do many times is they don't cover every area. They'll talk about evaluating and analyzing, but they won't cover the piece about drawing conclusions. They won't cover the piece about making recommendations. And so when you draft your response, go back and take a look at it. Have somebody else take a look at it. Make sure, did you cover the 3 things asked on that supplemental question? Because that's the information that's going to be looked at on the rating criteria. And if you have that experience in all of those areas and you demonstrate it on your application, you're going to receive a higher score than someone that had the experience but just didn't provide all that information to be looked at by the person who's rating and reading your application. So to give you that as a background, if you want to go back and take a look at our candidate today, Edward Smith, go ahead and review his resume and take a look at that 3rd competency area and see what you would score him based on the criteria that you have in front of you.
So we're still on page 3, right? Qualification 3, right? And looking at Edward Smith's resume.
Take a look at the criteria. Take a look at the criteria, take a look at the resume, and for this, you're now the rater, you're now the evaluator. So look at what score you would give on his competency of ability to analyze data, draw conclusions, and make recommendations. Let's take a few minutes to do that.
A lot of times we take on duties and responsibilities. When you have the opportunity to work with someone, do that. So that when you're at home, you can say, oh, I remember when we were there, so-and-so did this, or she saw this, or she pointed out how I could do that. Because most of us, like myself, we all live in our heads, and then when it's time to do something, it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? So that's why I want you to get used to talking it out now with someone, so that when you are actually filling out an application, it won't be as difficult. Take advantage of your neighbor. They're for free today.
Okay, so in the real world, you'd have a little longer to review that application. But in the interest of time, we're going to move on. So let me see by a show of hands. How many people gave that candidate a 1? A 2? A few? A 3? More 3s. A 4? 5? Okay, a little range of scores there. This is why we train our raters. So we don't have that happen. All righty. So I need another hand. There we go. Let's take a look at this together against this rating scale and see what information we had or he described about his experience in this area. All right, so the top score, list of all 3 areas and provides details, examples. Does anybody see where they thought they saw some of these competencies about data analysis recommendations? There's a piece in here about that kind of, where, sorry? I agree. Bullet point number 2, researched and recommended metrics. So we're seeing this information on research and recommending. What about the 3rd piece? Are we seeing draw conclusions? Does anybody see anything about draw conclusions? So it looks like we have 2 of the 3. So it looks like the most we can go to is a score of 3. Does everybody see that? Okay, all right. Anything more you want to pass it back to Tom?
I just want to say this real quick before I pass the microphone to Dina. Do you notice we're looking for keywords? Include the keywords in your application when you apply, because Just like Catherine's telling you, just like I'm telling you now, look for those keywords because that's what people who are screening your application are looking for as well, right? No secrets, right? We're sharing you. The good inside information today, okay? Include the keywords. I'll pass it to Dina.
Thanks, Todd. I love that. Keywords. Oh, please, if we were to ask about a word that would describe each of us, to put it in just words, if you'll do this, if you'll look at Appendix B now, page 9, we are going to consider something called ACB. ACB, I think there's a song, as easy as 1, 2, 3, or really wouldn't that be 1, 3, 2? But okay, you get the gist. ACB, let's look at that. Let's talk about those words. This is a guide, and really, if you walk away from here today and have to review, I'm okay with that. It's a lot to take in, but it's all equally important. But have a little swag in your step today, and remember this ACB. It will help to guide you into remember action. Start with that action word. We have provided a list of words that will help you to help us to get you there. Each work experience statement that you have should begin with an action word. This clearly defines the action of what it was you were doing. Followed by the context. Describe the details and background on why you took the action. This is where you elaborate so that you're clear, that we're clear, that you're clear what you were doing. Put it in context for us. And ultimately, the benefit, the outcome, and the result of your action. Let us know by that action word and what it is specifically you did led to this result. Help us through that whole process so that we know that you're clear, that we're clear, that you're clear, that we're both clear of what this did. So remember the ACB. This is just something silly and giddy, but it really will have an impact on how you design and articulate your wealth of knowledge so that both of us are clear in going forward. Do you have more to add to that, Todd? Because you're kind of the guru on that.
I do.
Okay, add it in there.
So, you think about the job duties you do, and you say, I answer phones. So on your application, you put answer phones. What does that really tell me about you? Right? Answer, that was my action verb, Todd, and phones is what I was answering. Okay? That doesn't follow the ACB model, right? And we all laugh, but then I look at the applications that come in and go, oh, they answered phones like everyone else. So I asked them, you answer phones. For who? Well, I answer phones at HRS. Okay. For who, though? Oh, for about 30 staff on the floor. So, you don't just answer phones, right? You are, you work as the central hub of communications for the HRS second floor, which consists of over 30 members. Is that a better description of what they do for a living than answer phones? That's a big difference, right? The English language can be beautiful. Utilize it. We have a list of a whole bunch of action words, right? You don't just get mail, right? You service a department of 60 employees or 18,000 employees to make sure that they receive their mail in a timely manner, right? Don't we all collaborate? Don't we all coordinate, right? You guys do a lot more than you think you do. You need to think about what you do here at the county and give it some time and find out words that best describe what you do, okay? Really do take the time. It's important. Okay, I know it's a new model, right? ACB, utilize it as you fill out your next application, okay? It will help you. Remember, action words, think about that context and think about what were those benefits, what were the results of those actions in that context, okay? Once you're done with those competitive assessments, which I mean app rating, QAP, any online assessments that are given, you're going to be added to an eligible list. And there's a number of applicants. It's based on various factors, right, of how big the list is and how long that list lasts. It's based on the number of vacancies. It's based on the business climate and type of recruitment or the life expectancy of that list. 6 months, 3 months, a year, right? It depends. It depends on the recruitment. And it depends on the type of position that's being recruited for. Referral and selection interview. So once you're put on that eligible list A, B, they will have referral and selection interviews. These are not QAP, qualification appraisal panel interviews. These are about fit. These are about relationship with the person you're applying to and seeing, do you work well together, right? So they're going to ask you about your experience and your education, how it relates to the position, but just, can I work with this person? Is this the person I want to have as my boss, or is this the person I want to have as my employee? Okay? That's the selection interview. After that, you have the job offer, which is step 6, which I don't have a slide for. But I do want to talk about some finishing steps, okay? And in your packet, we do have finishing steps listed. Things to think about to finalize your application, okay? Remember, it's not a resume. A generic resume is not going to get you through minimum qualifications. It's not going to get you through an app rating, okay? So your thoughts of, I have one resume, it's going to get me a job at the county. I hate to dash your dreams and hopes. I'm going to dash them right now. It's not going to work. You need to tailor fit your application to the job you're applying for. You need to have someone else review it, okay? To make sure it doesn't have errors, spelling errors, grammatical errors.
Because of time, and we promised you that we would give you enough of time, first I want to thank my presenters for taking the time to present to you a presentation to help you with getting through the application. As I said earlier, we made sure that you had the guide so that once you leave here, you'll have a better understanding when you are faced with filling out the application, that you'll know how to. I want you to know that next week we will talk more about the interviewing, and we'll also have a guide so that you'll have more time. We understand that you only had 1 hour. We had 2 questions that I want to respond to, and if there are any other questions, please raise your hand so that we can get to it. I think we have maybe about 10 minutes before it's 1 o'clock.
All righty, so I'll do my best to answer the questions that you have. I have a couple here already. If you're concerned that I'm not going to get to your question, please raise your hand and let me give you a card so I can make sure I get the questions back to everybody. Excuse me, I put my glasses on. The first thing I want to make you all aware of is on every single job posting, there is the name and the phone number and the email of the recruiter. For any recruitment, if you have any questions, your first point of contact should be that recruiter, because they're the one who has all the information about that particular recruitment. If you have a question about something, a recruitment that's closed, I would encourage you to talk to the recruitment manager for your agency or your department. There should always be somebody that you can refer your HR question to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead with the questions that I already have on the card. Okay, first question. And this is in reference to the candidate we looked at on the resume. And it says, under that candidate's resume, could HR assume that if you make recommendations that you draw conclusions, or does it have to be written out? And this is where I would say that when you're looking at multiple applications and you want to have a consistent process for every candidate, then we're going to take the information that we see on the application. I always think of myself as being on the hot seat, and if somebody challenges me or says to me, Catherine, how did you make this decision? How did you determine whether this candidate moved forward or not? I imagine myself in front of somebody with a piece of paper, and I see that I can show them, this is where I saw this information, here, here, and here. So if I don't see it, then I'm not going to make that assumption or conclusion, because then I'm into a sort of a gray area, and I want to be consistent and fair to all candidates. So we're looking for the information on the application. So I hope that answers that question. Would it look contrived if you start trying to use some of the techniques that Todd explained on your application? I would suggest that you draft your application, you draft your supplemental questions, you have someone else review it. As Todd mentioned, it's going to take a couple of drafts to get that ready into something that's sort of the most professional, sort of smooth looking. But I think if you practice it and play with it, there's certainly a way to gather that key information. Okay, I have a question here about why do we have countywide recruitments for, say, staff specialist positions? Why do we have one recruitment for staff specialists and then we use it for multiple vacancies like accounting or payroll or facilities or whatever? So I would say, classic HR answer, it depends. For some recruitments, it's so specialized that we do run a specialized recruitment. However, we don't have the resources to open a staff specialist recruitment every time one department or agency has a vacancy. We don't have that resource to open a recruitment for every single position. We're going to open a recruitment to establish a list and then pull from that list. And that's when you'll see those supplemental questions, just like on this one for the Sheriff's Department. And this recruitment was just for Sheriff. But even within their department, sometimes they're going to want someone with payroll, with accounting, with facilities. And what you'll often find is that your candidates have the same experience, they have the same fundamental competencies and background, and so you don't want to keep having those people apply over and over again, so you want to establish one pool, and then you filter based on what your needs are for that specific vacancy. And sometimes you're going to need a filter because it's specialized, and sometimes you're going to say, actually what I need is someone who's just got the skill set and the competencies, and I'm going to go from there. So that's that question. Okay. 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 Two more. You take that. I have a lot of questions. All right, so this question,
We'll answer them.
any questions we don't get to today, we'll work out a way to get you the information. And if I can just briefly do a quick plug for my social media card that was on everybody's chair. All of our job postings, many of our job postings are now on our social media sites. Please go ahead and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on LinkedIn. Sometimes our best recruiters are all of you in this room. Sometimes you know of people who've got the experience and the background we're looking for. Please feel free to share that information with people that you know. Please feel free to use that information for yourself to kind of follow and be aware of what opportunities are coming open. There's also on that card is a QR code that has some tips on your application. All right, so this question is, why is the test different to the job? Why does the test not look like what the job is? And the best way that I can explain that is we have an office specialist position vacant in human resources. I'm not able to test for what I need for that job. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to determine what competencies are required for every office specialist position in the county. What's the kind of the baseline? So is that Excel? Is it Word? Is it customer service skills? What is it? And we gather that information by asking hiring departments, what are the competencies needed for this job? We look at the minimum qualifications. So the test is meant to reflect the underlying competencies for that job to yield us a qualified pool of applicants. When we come to interview, and it's my position in HR, then the things that I'm really looking for with that HR person, I'm going to get at in the interview. But there's no way I can have a test for just my HR position for a county-wide list. And the other piece that you have to bear in mind is that whatever assessment we have, if it's an application rating, a qualifications appraisal panel, it's only getting at a portion of what is likely to predict what's successful on the job, because there's only so much that assessment can do. It can't capture everything. There's so much more that we're going to get in the interview process and the reference check process. So it's not going to cover every single competency. It should cover the key things that are required for that classification. If you have questions on any particular recruitment, please ask your recruiter. There's some practice test materials online. If you're getting a notice to take a test, it should tell you up front, these are the kind of the competencies that are being assessed. If you're not sure what that means, if you want clarification on that, please contact your recruiter. Okay. I believe so. Okay. So let's tell them. I have a lot I have a lot of questions. Thank you so much. We will get the answers to you back in an answer. Thank you.